So this is a, let me just start here. So this is a part of the GEORG project that deals with the socio-economic implications of the utilization of geothermal energy here in Iceland. So it's a different perspective, and we have been working on this in the past few years in different stages. We started off by identifying or compiling time series data on the geothermal energy utilities here in the country. And following that, we started to build an input-output model, which was presented here in this forum, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And then, once we had done that, that was done to identify the kind of the importance of the geothermal sectors here in Iceland. And then we wanted to address a third issue, which is more to do with the impact that the social and economic impact that this utilization has had on Icelandic society. And of course, this is a bit difficult because there are of course various ways to measure impacts, and I'm talking about here is like more or less the direct impact. We can of course address issues like the knowledge that we have been talking about in the last presentation, that kind of generation of knowledge through various agencies here in Iceland. But we wanted to look at it more directly. And if you look at on the geothermal water, we of course are very familiar with things like space heating. We have 90% of households enjoying geothermal energy. We have the swimming pools and spas. Of course, the pools here in Iceland are an important part of the social network that we have. Recreation and tourism. We have most of the country's swimming pools are being heated by geothermal heat. We use these for snow melting. And then, of course, we have direct use by firms in their own production process. And the geothermal water also, the impact on health and general well-being. And these general impacts are very difficult to measure. To take an example, it's very hard, or I haven't seen any data on that, to identify, for instance, here in Iceland, communities which are located in cold areas that then gain access to hot water, which will completely change the style of the living conditions for many people, and how that will affect various illnesses and social well-being. And I know that many people that have been suffering from things like arthritis and various sort of illnesses like that, they feel much better when they have access to heat. But this does not appear in any documents. So it's very hard to measure these impacts which are there. We all know they are there, but they don't appear in official statistics. And anyone who has visited places I was just recently, just before Christmas, in the United Kingdom, and visiting remote places there. And what struck me about the way of living there was the cold in the houses. Now, you all know how this feels. It gives you a very chilly feeling. But it's difficult to measure. And so we have this is taken, of course, from the National Energy Authority. You have this, we see how it's being used for space heating being predominant. But what we wanted to focus on was the direct use by industry. So that was our point of departure, so to speak. We know, of course, that these general uses like space heating, like for utilization of energy, for the generation of electricity, of course, that is that's a direct impact. But of course, there's no way for us to tell if this electricity is coming from geothermal power plants or other power plants. So we decided instead to try to identify firms that use this in their own production process. So what we did then was that we set up in the summer of 2013 and simply looking at each and every community in Iceland, where do we find firms that directly use the geothermal resource, namely hot water in our case, in their production process. And we went through every community trying to identify firms. And this is the list first part of the list that we have. So we have identified there, and we have the, you see the names. Is there a pointer somewhere I can use?
You can use it actually.
Oh yeah, I can just use this one. Okay, so we have it here. So we have here then the location, the regions. Here we have the communities. Here we have the names of the firms involved. And here we have the type of activity. And we classified them into 3 different activities. There was, of course, the greenhouses, the greenhouse production. There was fish farming, and there was other industry. So we went from community to community, identifying what are the firms that use, what kind of firms are using these this resource. So this is the outcome of that. This is the first part, and then this is the second part. And as you can see, most of them are using greenhouses, but there are also some fish farming. And to be more precise, what we found that when we looked at it, that you had about 44% of the firms, of the 72 firms in question, were greenhouses, and another 33% were in fish farming, and the rest was in industry. I'll just come back to what we mean by industry in a few seconds. So predominantly, there are just two branches of economic activity where we use the hot water directly as an input in the production process. And there are not very many firms at all, 72, apart from, like we mentioned before, the research cluster, the engineering and research clusters. These are the firms themselves. And if you look at one other aspect, the geographical location, you can see that most of them are in the south, 45%, and the others are there are some in the capital region and the southwest, and you can see the distribution there. There are obviously areas like the west and the south, and some even in the west fjords. So, but predominantly they are in the south of Iceland. There's no surprises there, of course. And if we look at, we can see that they are found, the firms that utilize this are found in 29 of the country's 74 at the time communities. And most of them are in Hrunamannahrepur in the south, Borgarbyggð in the west, Hveragerði in the south, and Norðurþing in the northeast. So these are the locations. So what did we do then? Well, once having identified the firms, we wanted to know a little bit more about them. We wanted to know, how do they use it and what do they do with it, and is it important for them to have access to this resource? So we set about contacting the firms, and we came into contact with most of them. 68 to be precise. This is the greenhouse. What is this being used for? In the greenhouses, it's the indoor or outdoor heating of soil or atmosphere to increase productivity, or enable the growing of certain species or products. And in the fish farming, of course, is to raise water temperature to increase the growth rate, and possibly also to make it possible to farm certain species that need hotter water. In the industries, it's more diverse. Traditionally, we have been using the hot water for drying, indoor drying of various products. We have the stockfish or the salt fish, we have the stockfish, we have cod heads, we have some small fish, etc. But there are also some other things that they be used for, like the drying of seaweed in the plant in the west of Iceland, in Reykhólar. Also, there's one ice cream producer here in Iceland that uses heating in the pasteurization of milk products. We also found that there were one or two firms that had water-heated paint cabins that were used for spray painting of cars. And we even had in salt production in the south, in Reykjanes, we had the preheating, boiling, and the drying processes. We were using hot water. But still, the first aspect, the use of hot water in the drying of various fish products is the most widely used way in the firms. So this is a survey. Like I said, we had 72 firms which we identified. We contacted 68 of these, and we tried to harass them as much as we could, phoning and emailing, and we spent a long time sort of going after them. We wanted some pretty detailed information about their running, and in the end we managed to get 24 to take part in the survey. Not very many, but still it gives us a feel for what kind of firms we have. And we would have liked to have persuaded more firms to take part, but that unfortunately was not possible. So what we wanted to know about these firms were things like, you know, is clustering important? How large is the firm? How important is access to the resource for the setting up or running of the firm? How large is the firm? And is it connected closely to the local economy? So these were the main things that we wanted to know about. So the first thing that we asked was, you know, how important is it for your firm to be close to others in the same branch? This clustering thing. And we had 5 possibilities, and of course we were a bit surprised, or rather possibly not surprised, but this here is of a very limited importance. 58% of very limited importance, or of very limited, and another 21 of limited importance. So close to 80% of the firms did not regard it very important for them at all to be close to others. There were some, of course, who said it was important, but very, very few. And for another 17% said it doesn't really matter at all, one way or another. So there's no clustering in these branches. We can see it more clearly here. If we code the replies on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most limited importance and 5 being the very important, we can see that for fish farming it's the lowest, 1.43. And of course bear in mind here that for biological reasons it may be unwise to locate fish farms close to one another. So that may be a reason. For industry, it doesn't matter at all, 1.57, and for greenhouse production, it's 2.0. So there is very, very little to be gained from having these firms located close to one another. What we asked next was how important was the availability of you can read see the access to geothermal resources in comparison with other things. And the other things that we mentioned there were community support, government support, close to other firms in the same industry, proximity to markets, to owners' home, the weather conditions, proximity to general services, access to labor, and important inputs and access to cold water. And of course, the geothermal resource is the red column. So it was very important for the firms when they were being set up to have access to this, to hot water. And what mattered most, if we see that on this one, what mattered most, the 54% said what mattered most to us was this access to geothermal. So that was important for us to know that. And then we wanted to know, you know, if today you were thinking about the hot water that you use in your business, how important is it for you today? Is it essential or not very important? And it's crucial. Crucial meaning that these firms, 70% of these firms would not be able to continue in business without access to this resource. Another 30% said it was rather important. They could get by, possibly by having some substitutes, oil or electricity to heat up water or something like that, but it would be at very high costs and it would be quite inconvenient. So for most of these firms of our survey, the resource is crucial. It's absolutely essential for them. We wanted to know a little bit more about these firms. How large are they? We measured that in man-years. So we have here tiny, less than 9 man-years, and a small would be 10 to 50, and sort of rather large, medium would be above 50. These are classifications, I think, according to the European Union. And you can see that most of the firms are small. Most of them have 9 or fewer man-years each year. And then we wanted to know how many people do they usually employ? So we see here that they have, this is the same similar slides. They employ on average about 13 to 14 people. Most of them do that. So, and that includes, I think, the owner and his family. So that's what they were like. Now, how big are they in terms of turnover? This is for the 3 years, 2010, 11, and 12. And this is the total. You can see this line here. It's a total turnover of these firms that were involved in our survey. And then this is the average size in million of Icelandic kroners. And then this is all Icelandic firms, and you can see the average size of all Icelandic firms. And as you can see from this, the average firm in our survey is 6-7 times larger than the average firm in Iceland. This, of course, includes every single firm, even these that we call einkahlutafélög. So they're all involved there. And so there's a quite considerably larger these firms that are included in our survey than you would find in Iceland in general. Now, what we also wanted to know was the importance of these firms for the local economy. Local economy meaning then the community where they are located, or the region, the country region where they are located. Now, are these firms important in that aspect? And so we wanted to know, how much of inputs is being bought locally, and how much of the revenue comes from local firms or individuals. And you can see here on the cost side that they are indeed getting a lot of inputs, labor and other stuff, from their local communities. 48% locally within the community or close to that, and within the area it's about 56%. But if you look on the revenue side, it's a totally different story. For revenue, the home market is not very important. They are selling further out. They may be selling to the capital region, or they may be selling even abroad. So that's not, you can see that they are heavily reliant on the home market for inputs, but not for the sales of their products. So what then can we say about this? Well, we can see that in our survey, we had 72 firms that were using geothermal water, mostly in greenhouses and fish farms. It's not, in general, important for them to be close to one another. Proximity is not an issue, and clustering is not an issue. Access to the resource is absolutely essential. They employ around 14 people. They have higher turnover than the average Icelandic firm. They depend on the local economy for access to inputs, but not to sell their products. And that concludes.